Good evening to everybody that has just joined us. This is the Radio Club of America interview series, and we're interviewing Ken Claerbout tonight. And Ken has a great story to tell. He's got a slide deck. It's going to be very, very interesting, so you don't want to miss any of this. And we are recording it, so it'll be available on the Radio Club of America YouTube channel as well. And we want to welcome Barney Scholl. Barney is our counsel, our attorney for the Radio Club of America and a vice president, and Barney will be the moderator. So if you have any questions, please put those in the chat or in the Q&A area, and Barney will be periodically coming on and helping us with the questions. Ken, you said that you came out of high school, you had a big interest in wireless, and you made this application. You had to go down to Chicago, and you were working on a 2-year degree, but you left out the part where you decided to do your 4-year degree and actually even get a master's degree. How did that all work?
Well, so my career, the first 15 years with the government, things were going pretty well, and it was clear to me that this was something I really enjoyed and something I was good at. But I also knew my career was going to be limited if I didn't get some higher education, get an engineering degree. I mean, we worked for a lot of engineers. Some of them were good, some not so much. And I thought, you know, I'm never going to get on the same level as these guys or above them if I don't go back to school. So I did that. I took a few classes while I was overseas, and then I came back and started nighttime school and got an electrical engineering degree from George Mason University up here in Northern Virginia. Gosh, I don't remember how many years that took, but that's a long haul doing it at night and that sort of thing. But I was determined to do it, and I pulled it off. Probably a couple of years later, I became interested in getting a master's degree. I looked at the MBA thing and put in an application to Mason again. And actually, the head of the electrical engineering department said, you interested in getting a master's in electrical engineering because your grades are pretty good. And I had been out of that a little bit too long, the math and all that stuff. And I just, I got a little bit tired of chasing ones and zeros and electrons and that sort of thing. I wanted something a little bit different. So they had a telecommunications program, and one track was kind of like public policy. There was a couple of MBA courses, public policy, and probably the best course of it all was a program taught at the law school of George Mason, telecommunications law. And it was by an adjunct professor from the FCC. So we had a class of, 20, 25 people there. There was 25, 24 of them were attorneys, and I was the one engineer. But it was kind of good because as some of this stuff would come up talking about how the industry evolved and some of the technical side of it, I could kind of chime in a little bit, but then, they were always giving me the legal side. So anyways, I went and did that as well. And it certainly, it was tough, but it was worthwhile career-wise. Otherwise, I wouldn't be where I was today.
And so let's talk about where you are today and the position you hold in your company.
Yeah.
Even though it is, a government agency. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, first off, it is now called the U.S. Agency for Global Media, USAGM. Some of you may have known it as a Broadcasting Board of Governors, and what that is it's the U.S. government's agency for broadcasting, non-military broadcasting. And there are a lot of individual broadcast services under it. And those are probably the ones you're going to recognize. Radio Free Asia, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, Radio Marti, Office of Cuba Broadcasting. The big one, of course, Voice of America. Those are all separate broadcast entities, and USAGM is kind of the parent agency for all of them. So when you get into the engineering side of transmission facilities, the stuff overseas, general counsel for the agency, CFO, those sort of functions, that's all at a USAGM level. And then, we support all the various broadcasters. My position, I'm acting chief right now of the Broadcast Technologies Division. My boss retired in January, so it's kind of like the NFL. Someone gets hurt, next man up. Here I am. We'll see how this plays out because, as you know, we have a new administration now in Washington, and that always kind of influences agencies and, as to if there's going to be any new priorities, restructuring, that sort of thing. So I'm just in an acting capacity right now, but it's part of the Transmission Engineering Directorate. So we're largely responsible for the infrastructure overseas, more of at a project level. I got a list here because it's I forget some of these, but our division specifically, we do propagation analysis, coverage prediction for medium, shortwave, VHF, UHF, FM system design implementation, medium wave, shortwave design implementation. We don't really do much terrestrial TV anymore. We do have a couple stations, but we really don't do that anymore. Shortwave frequency scheduling and international coordination. So all of the shortwave broadcasts for Voice of America, Radio Free Asia, our division in USAGM handles that. We have a pretty robust worldwide monitoring network for medium wave, AM, shortwave, so we can listen to all our broadcasts and make sure they're being heard. And if they're getting jammed or we've got interference, we can move frequencies, that sort of thing. And then, we have a pretty large broadcast infrastructure we maintain, but we also lease shortwave and medium wave time in certain places too, just because we don't have the capacity or, I'll show you this when we get to the slides, they'll see one of the projects of medium wave build out, but in some cases it's just easier to lease the airtime than try to find a facility and build it up. And, that takes a lot of time and effort.
So Ken, how many locations, how many countries? So we have some idea of the scale here.
Oh boy. Because, when you talk about, you're talking shortwave, medium wave, FM, the last 6-7 years, I've been supporting the FM broadcast network. So that's what I'm most familiar with. We have over 100 stations globally, and these are just like FM stations you'd listen to in your hometown, in your car, that sort of thing. We still do maintain some of the traditional shortwave and medium wave stations overseas, like in Thailand, Philippines, Tinian, Saipan, Botswana, Sao Tome, I don't know, I get Greenville, North Carolina. So those are still there too, but the agency also has a pretty robust affiliate network. So what they'll do is, these are local radio stations, or sometimes TV, that take a half hour, an hour, 2 hours of VOA or USAGM programming and carry it on their station. So we're everywhere. And then of course, we have a pretty large presence online too, because a lot of this stuff is going digital, and we're trying to hit those platforms as well.
What about down in South America, Ken? What's the presence like down there?
We don't have a whole lot. I've not done much down there. Some of our coverage obviously follows world events. So when things get ramped up in Venezuela and so on, we look for coverage for that sort of thing, but not a whole lot that I know of going on in South America. Not any stations we have down there. We broadcast to Cuba and that sort of thing, Radio Marti, and stuff out of shortwave and so on. But I think it's fairly limited in that region.
Right. Anything in Australia or Oceania?
No, because if you look at our mission, we're really a lot of times we're trying to get into areas that don't have an open or a robust media. And there's a lot of places come to mind. If you see a world map of freedom of press, that sort of thing, a lot of places pop up in mind. So some of the more, up in Australia, New Zealand, things like that, our content's available online on the internet, and they can stream it and that sort of thing, but we don't really have a radio presence. Now, one other thing I just thought of is good to mention is we were prohibited until recent years to broadcast in the U.S. The Smith-Mund Act prohibited us from broadcasting our programs within the U.S. That's been loosened up a little bit in the last couple of years, to the extent that media here can use stories from VOA. So every once in a while, if you're watching ABC, NBC, or Fox, or something like that, you may see a story that was produced by VOA, or there may be a portion of the story taken from VOA coverage. So we're allowed to do that now. But, BBC can broadcast in the UK, but we don't have that ability.
So we're on here tonight with Ken Claerbout, and we're talking about his work with USAGM and facilities all over the world, and things like Radio Marti and VOA. And please put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat, and Barney Scholl will bring those up here. Barney, do you have a question for us?
Yes, I see one popped up here. And the question was, how many studios do you use? And are they located in the countries they serve locally, or are they located outside, maybe in the US?
Good question. The majority of the radio and TV studios are at our headquarters building right downtown Washington, D.C. We're like 3 blocks from the Capitol, just across the street from the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. So we've got a ton of radio studios, TV. So the majority of the programming is done in that building and then gets distributed via satellite. For the FM stuff that I've been working on, we downlink content via C-band satellite, and that's becoming a little bit more of a challenge in some of these places due to terrestrial interference. But and then where possible, we'll use terrestrial lines, internet delivery, that sort of thing. So the actual numbers of studios, I don't know. There may be 6, 7, 8 TV studios, and they have little stand-ups too, not full-blown studios. But all of the broadcast infrastructure in our building, in our headquarters, is maintained by VOA technicians and engineers. We don't touch it. Our stuff is outside pretty much the borders of the U.S. Now, a lot of these language services will have news bureaus overseas, so they'll collect stuff for stories, but that all comes back to Washington, where the editorial decisions are made, where the content's put together. The stuff for VOA I'm talking about now. Radio Free Europe is in Prague, so they do their thing over there. But so anyways, we don't have a lot of studios. We can't go live on our FM or shortwave stations from a studio overseas somewhere. It's all content that's downloaded via satellite or terrestrial.
Another question, Barney.
I think I'll take the one about how many different foreign languages are used in the broadcast.
I want to say the number's around 46. I don't know. I should know that. It's somewhere in the area of 46, but it's pretty extensive. And, it's pre-COVID. It was always kind of interesting to be in our building because you had a lot of people from different nationalities present in there. And, from the Chinese branch, the Persians, South America, French to Africa, English to Africa, that sort of thing. But it's somewhere in the ballpark, 40 to 50-ish.
Another question, Barney.
Are there any guidelines or rules, especially about broadcasting negative U.S. news events?
No, there's this gets I'm always thankful I'm in engineering because our job's pretty easy. I mean, my job, I always say, is to build them a station overseas, whoever it is, if it's VOA or whoever, to give them the largest coverage in that area. But it's up to them to deal with the content and to put on the stuff they can and the things that will draw the listeners. But it is funded by the U.S. government, but the journalists are fiercely independent, and there is a firewall set up to keep them independent. And anytime it looks like that might be breached, you will hear about it. So, you always go back to the fact that it is funded by the government, but the content operates pretty much independent of that. Now, we don't have too many problems overseas where a local government might get upset with the stories we're covering. It does happen, and I've gotten involved in it a couple times in a couple of places, but for the most part, we're pretty good. We've only been pulled off the air in one country, and we're still off in Burundi, our 2 FM stations. But usually the French are the ones that have the problems, especially in Francophone Africa. They get crossed up with the local government, and they usually get knocked off the air, and VOA and BBC stay on.
Another question. I see there's a couple in the Q&A and some more in chat there.
Oh yeah, they're coming in from various different directions.
Try to
here.
shorten my answers here.
I'm trying to find what I've got. Do you see an end to shortwave?
Not right away. I think, you know, we've drawn down some, and in the slide presentation, you'll see some pictures of a shortwave station in Sri Lanka, which we closed. I think you're going to see more of that, the shortwave and the medium wave. We'll draw back on some of that in the future here, but there's no plans at the moment. And frankly, you know, a lot of the foreign broadcasters have already cut out a lot of their shortwave or have done it all together. So it really is dependent on the areas we're trying to cover and, you know, where the listeners are. So yeah, I think, you know, we'll be probably drawing that down some, but I don't see it going away completely anytime soon.
So let's talk about that, Ken. Here in the United States, there were several VOA sites. I can think of the one down in Southern Ohio, the one in North Carolina, where there was substantial investment. I mean, you know, an antenna system to die for, and they were shuttered. You want to talk about some of that?
Yeah, you've been out to Visalia too, the one in Delano, just south of Visalia. Yeah, you know, it's just a sign of the times. The areas we needed to cover. You know, we still have an active shortwave station in Germany. And, you know, I suppose years ago that kind of covered Eastern Europe and so on. We don't need that sort of coverage anymore. So it just really, those facilities are very expensive to operate and maintain, no doubt. And I think it's largely a part of the audiences we're targeting now, the changing media environment. Some of this can be done online, or we're moving a little bit more towards FM radio. We're staying in radio medium. So yeah, just really a sign of the times.
So when we talk about Radio Marti, and you know, it's aimed down into Cuba and around Cuba, and you know, I'm thinking about the average Cuban and what he can afford. You know, is a shortwave radio in the budget?
Yeah, that's a great question. We kind of ebb and flow as far as overall the agency, as far as market research. You know, our programs are hitting the audiences and what methods are using to listen. We've ramped up a bunch of shortwave to Burma with everything going on there. So I've been told, I don't see the data, but that actually shortwave is a pretty viable medium down there yet. So, you know, if they can back that up and we know the people are there, then yeah, we're going to use it. So
Radio Marti, tell us where the transmitter is and how much power and what's the ERP like. Come on, let's dazzle us.
Yeah, the problem is I'm not real familiar with that station, Tim. But yeah, we do some broadcasting out of North Carolina, and then we have the AM station down in Marathon. I really don't know the answer to the power they're running out of there. It's probably around 250 kilowatts, something like that. The antennas, which I'll show in a little while, if you're using our standard curtain arrays, those can range anywhere from a gain of 15 to 20 dBi. You know, for some of the curtain arrays we use. So, I mean, if you do the math, I didn't do it ahead of time, but you know, anywhere, if we've got a 250 kilowatt shortwave transmitter and 15 to 20 dBi of gain, that's a fair amount of power.
Fair amount, yeah. No,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
You know, I got to share this before I forget.
Okay.
When I interviewed for the job, one of the guys that interviewed me was an old-time transmitter engineer, great guy. And so actually the interview was more him telling stories than anything, but he was talking about a situation in Greenville where they blew up a transmitter, and he said, you know, Ken, he says, when things fail around here, it tends to be rather spectacular and pretty darn expensive. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I've never forgotten that.
No, at those kinds of power levels.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You pretty much know where the problem is.
Go ahead, Barney, with another question for Ken Claerbout.
I heard you mention curtain arrays, and there's someone asked on here, sort of a ham question. Have you ever had a chance to get on the ham bands with any of those curtain arrays?
No, I have not. It would be, frankly, it would be difficult to do because there's so much RF floating around those stations that probably the minute you hooked up your transceiver to one of those antennas, if you had any other broadcast going on that facility, you'd probably blow out the front end or other parts of it too. Now, Tim had mentioned the station in Ohio, which used to be a former VOA transmission site. They do have a ham station there. Not quite sure what they're using for antennas, but I think, once in a while they do something like that, or maybe Greenville is a special event. So, but I've not done it myself.
What else do you have, Barney?
Do you see a future of migration to digital modulation for medium frequency, high frequency, and VHF broadcasting?
We've been dabbling in DRM out of Greenville and shortwave. I don't know. The receivers are expensive. They don't seem to be real plentiful. I'm not quite sure the market's there. I'm not a DRM expert by any stretch of the imagination. My boss was much more involved with that sort of thing. But got to have the market and the people there with the receivers to make it viable. And then again, in parts of the world where we're broadcasting to. So we'll see.
How about another question here? We'll do a few more questions, and then we're going to get into your slide deck, Ken.
Okay,
and I can't
sure.
wait to see it.
Ken, someone asked the question do you see a move to the internet being used more for dissemination of information? And if you are moving that direction, is there a risk of censorship in countries?
Yes, we are moving that direction. Because that's where a lot of the media and stuff is today. So we need to compete. We need to be on there. Two things. Yeah, there's a risk of censorship. Some countries will shut down the internet, or they've got firewalls blocking content. So that's always an issue, something you have to deal with. The other thing too, like I spent a lot of time in Africa, so I kind of use this as an example. Everyone's got smartphones now. I mean, you could be living on the street, but you got your smartphone. But they don't have the money to buy the credits or whatever to stream content on their phone. I mean, it's just too expensive for them to do. But a lot of the phones now have radio receivers in them, FM radio receivers. So they'll listen to radio. So we've got some places where the content's available, but maybe it's just because of the, I'm trying to think of the phrase now, but just they don't have the resources to be able to access it on the internet. So, but yeah, there's a definite move in that direction to go more digital, and we can put up a lot of neat content too. Videos and different stories and that sort of thing, which you can't do on traditional platforms like radio.
One more question, Barney, and then we're going to go into Ken's slide deck.
Oh, this might be a simple one or not. What is the relationship with the FCC?
We really don't have one because we are a government agency. We don't, anything outside of the U.S. we don't deal with the FCC on. And as far as our broadcasting stuff in Greenville and Marathon, for example, we deal with NTIA. NTIA, yeah, right. We deal with them, so we really don't have much of a relationship with the FCC.
Okay, Ken, why don't you go ahead and do a screen share?
All right, let's see. I think I just click on this PowerPoint slide, share. Let's see. I want to see if I can put it in the. Shucks. All right, hold on a second.
If you just do from the beginning, you click up the upper left hand.
Yeah, I was trying to get in a different. All right, screen sharing. Okay. Some reason I can't get in the presentation mode. Hang on here.
Yeah, if you go from the beginning.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, I lost my notes, but anyways, okay. So I just went digging through our folders online, just looking for some cool pictures. So I'll just a couple of things for our pictures regarding medium wave, FM, and then a couple of shortwave pictures. But if you're into radio, this is pretty cool. This is a building for a 800 kilowatt medium wave array, 972 kilohertz. It's a 3-tower array. This is something we did. You can see the date stamp in 2006. This is actually being built at the factory. It's the tuning and phasing network. They put it all together there, tune it, test it out. Some pretty nice hardware. There's a lot of money tied up in copper in that thing too. But so they'll assemble it, test it, and everything. And you can see some of the variable capacitors, the inductors. It's
what company are we visiting?
That one I think is Kintronics.
Kintronics, and where is this headed?
To Tajikistan.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, anyways, I was talking to someone today. I'm not sure if that's an actual inductor or it looks like there's a transmission line, half-inch transmission line in there. Like it could be a decoupling, a sampling line coming off the tower. I'm not sure, but you see the feed through, which would be like going outside the building to the tower. But anyways, like I said, everything's assembled, tested in the factory. They break it all down and put it in crates and ship it. And so here we go. Here's the other end of it. Arriving in country, transmitters, antennas, God knows what else. There's a lot of stuff there.
All right, so you're in Tajikistan here, is that right?
That's it. I believe that's the stuff coming in.
And for those that might be on and don't know where this is, please describe where the country is.
Well, north of Afghanistan, because the site is down near the Afghan border. I've been down there a couple times, and Nadir, who's the ham radio operator. I've worked with him, and he drives. I told him once, I said, if we wind up downtown Kabul, I'm going to kill you, Nadir. And he laughed. He said, no, you won't. He said, they're going to get you first. So Nadir's a great guy. But so, yeah, that's where it's destined. There's actually 2 large broadcast sites in the country owned by the government. And so we're going to be, this is set up to lease some of their facilities, use their facilities. So this one involved, a lot of facilities work in the building, knocking out walls, core drilling for, cooling, getting electrical service in, being able to get transmission lines out of the building. Kind of the fascinating thing, a lot of these places, you see a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, look at that old beat up crane and truck and so on, but it did the job. And let's see. Okay, so now they're uncrating it out in the field. The local team puts it together. You can see they got the instruction manual. They're piecing this thing together. So they build it, and then we contract someone to come out, and also 1 or 2 staff members are out there to commission everything and test it out before we actually put it on the air. So they're just rebuilding it from what was in the factory. They had a pretty good crew out there. They actually pretty good putting this stuff together. Okay, so this is one of the towers. You can see on the left they're setting the base insulator, and the tower was built in country. So they built, and I don't know the height of the tower. I'm not sure, but that picture on the left where they're setting the base insulator, you can see some of the existing antennas and arrays out there. But there's that old crane setting the base section on the insulator, and away we go. So this was just one of 3 towers. Okay, so the FM program is what I'm really more familiar with because I've been working on this for the last 6 or 7 years. The last new FM we launched for Voice of America was in March of 2020. I was telling Tim before we got started, I came back right before the pandemic broke out. So 101.7 FM in Lusaka, Zambia. That picture on the left is from a game park out there, and they have cheetahs that you can go in and walk and pet. You see news stories once in a while. The reason I put this in there too is, we get to do a lot of fascinating things going out on these trips, see a lot of cool things, do a lot of fascinating things. But, you see news stories once in a while about someone with cheetahs and cheetahs turned on them and mauled them, or, someone in a zoo or whatever. You think, what an idiot, who would do that? Well, you know, here the opportunity was, I thought, this is too cool. I can't pass that up. And boy, they purr like a regular cat, and I was petting them and taking them for a walk. And, you know, thankfully it wasn't my day to be in the news, so, but it worked out well. So anyways, there's Zambia on the map. So the way this works is it can be a multi-year process, because the first thing we have to do is talk to the government, usually get a license from the media authority. Once we get that, then we start dealing with the people that manage the spectrum, assign frequencies, and then we have to find a place to put our equipment. So more often than not, we wind up with the national broadcaster, just because they have the best site in town, best location, best facility. And you'll also almost always find BBC, Radio France at these, Radio China at these facilities. But we've got to go in and do a technical survey, see what's there, what stations are there, what frequencies. You know, we have to make sure we've got proper spacing. In this case, it looks like 106.1, 95.5 or something like that, and 102.9 or something. Because, you know, we're going to have to put filtering on our transmitter, or maybe we're going to combine. That top picture on the right actually is a combiner. 2 of ZMBC stations were in there, and we wound up actually replacing that with a 3-port combiner, those 2 stations, and then 1 for VOA. But so we have to get a lay of the land to know it's there. And in the case of the frequency assignment, we were given 2 choices. Well, one didn't work because we didn't have enough spacing for one of the stations there. But we settled on 101.7 because it's far enough away from those other frequencies that we can get a combiner built or bandpass filter. Oh, here's the installation in March. On the left are 3 of the ZMBC engineers. A couple of girls were going at it. They were fantastic, but they're pulling out that old combiner, and then we'll put in the new one. On the right, we actually replaced the antenna. It was, I think, 8 vertical dipoles. So here, it's a crew of 5 guys. They're bringing the old dipoles down. It was probably good we did that, because they'd been up there for quite a few years, and they were starting to show their age. Quick story. One night when I was leaving the facility, those 5 guys were on the end of a rope, and they were going to lower the power divider from the tower down. So the transmission line and the transmitter goes up to the power divider, and it splits it to the 8-bay dipole. Well, there's 5 guys on this line, and they're on their tippy toes, and their arms are stretched up, and they're getting ready to bring this power divider down. I thought, geez, I hope they got enough weight on their end, because next thing you know, we're going to see them going up the tower. And I just told the driver, I said, man, let's get out of here. I don't want to see this. You know, we'll come back tomorrow and find out what happened. But it worked, you know. So on the left is a typical installation, FM installation. This is a 1 kilowatt. Most of the places are 1, 2 kilowatts. We have a couple of 5s, and we have 1 or 2 20 kilowatts. But from the top is just a monitor, so we can hear our audio. We've got a modulation monitor, 2 C-band satellite receivers, and Orban Optimod. I think that's a 5500i. Gates Airfax 1K transmitter, 1 kilowatt. And then below that are a series of UPS battery backup units. The big one, the transmitter's on the big one. And what we want to do there is, you know, a lot of these places, the power is not real reliable. So actually Zambia is pretty good. But if we lose commercial power, there's a certain period before the generator comes up, whether it's automatic or manual. So we like to hold everything on the air for as long as we can. Hopefully the generator backup comes on before the UPS dies. And then on the bottom is some IT equipment. We have some of our stations, not the entire network, but we're able to monitor them back in Washington through a VSAT, small KU band satellite terminal back to Washington. So everything's all IP based, and we get alarms if you know, there's no audio or transmitter goes off the air, it gets hot in there, that sort of thing. So we are able to monitor the system back in Washington. On the right is the new combiner. And you can see, well, there's 2 ports plumbed in there with rigid line, and we didn't have enough connectors to do rigid for the VOA transmitter, so we just use 1/2-inch line. And then when I got back, I sent them the parts to plumb that in with rigid. So this is actually pretty good. We've got a good signal on our receivers, considering the satellite we're using is over the western part of Africa, or maybe over the Atlantic a bit. So that's a pretty good see over N and EBNO. 1,000 watts forward, just 0.4 coming back. That's very good. I have to say, for all the years we've been getting combiners built and shipping them overseas and pretty much plug and play, we've been very, very lucky, because I'm always concerned that they may get bounced around a bit in shipping, and if they get detuned somehow, we are in big time trouble, because that's just not something you can typically deal with in the field. But this is perfect. I mean, you can't do a whole lot better than that. So that right there is success. I want to, let's see, hang on one second. I'm going to play a quick recording. It's about, I don't know, 40 seconds, I think. I'm going to have to play it into my headset here. But to me, this is really the payoff. This is the reward. After a couple of years putting one of these together, you finally have something tangible, and you can turn down your radio and tune across the band, and there you are on 101.7. So that day, finally, we get the transmitter on the air. I'm back in my hotel having dinner, checking email, and we're on the air. So let me play this. I don't know. Hopefully you guys can hear this.
Yeah, I think Zoom is getting us here, Ken.
Oh, okay. All right. That's fine. All right. But it's just cool to be able to hear your station on the air after all that work. So now, one of the things about traveling the world is you get to stay in some of the finest accommodations. And this is not Zambia, by the way. Zambia is beautiful. First time I was there, as we're driving in from the airport, I saw a Jaguar car dealership, and I thought, wow, you don't see this too many times in Africa. But this is a small city in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So hotel complete with netting for mosquitoes. I mean, look at that pool. That's disgusting. Would anyone here jump into that thing? It's terrible. And it was funny, as we're eating breakfast, some guy scooping bugs out of it. And I thought, does it really matter? And then this actually, the lunch isn't the one. I couldn't find the picture I was looking for, but I had a fish similar to this, but it was deep fried. And I mean, they just charred the heck out of it. There wasn't much left to it. And then some fries. So I kind of picked what I could from it and ate the fries. That was lunch that day. And then I just added this one real quick. This is when I was visiting a site in Mongolia, broadcast site. So we had a great meeting, and they said, oh, we want to have some lunch. And we've got this can of mutton stew. It's like a big gallon can. I thought, oh, good Lord. So, I mean, they set everything out, and then they brought out the bottle of Jim Beam, which they like to do over there. And I was so thankful for that, because it killed the taste of my mouth, And you just kind of eat around the edges. Guys, I had a big breakfast. I'm not that hungry, but yeah, here, fill up my glass. So lots of interesting experiences. Okay, a couple more slides here real quick. Shortwave stuff. I mentioned the curtain arrays before. So here you are. This is it's really a series of dipoles with a reflective screen behind it. So this is actually two systems here. We have what we call a high and a low band. So the low band is the bigger of the two, and those towers are about 450 feet, I think, something of that nature. And the low band covers 6 megs to, I think, about 11 megs, something like that. And then the smaller one is for the higher bands, I think up to 26 megahertz. They are slewable. The azimuth about 20 degrees, maybe a little bit more either direction, so we can slew them. And I think you can even change the takeoff angles. And Tim, I see you scheming already. You're going to need more property at your place.
So what country are we in here?
This is, gosh, I don't remember now. Might be Tinian or Saipan. I don't remember, to be honest with you.
Wow.
But yeah, it kind of gives you. You can see the taller and the smaller towers, and that's what that is. So, we have a number of these fixed in various directions. We can slew them, but we still, to get coverage to, pretty broad area we have to, and then the transmission line is probably a big 9-inch coaxial line. Stuff's pretty impressive too. But again, you know, the power, we're not using 9-inch line for the loss factor because, you know, shortwave isn't that big of a deal, but it's got to be able to carry the power. Okay, this is Sao Tome off the west coast of Africa. There you see some current arrays again, and actually they live right on the compound. It looks pretty nice. And if you're not afraid of heights, you can get a job as a tower climber rigging up there, and that is not for me. This is Kuwait. We actually have a rotatable array. I think the broadcasters up in Maine just put one up here in the last couple of years too, but this is pretty impressive. But it turns, I think, 360 degrees.
And who's the manufacturer of this stuff, Ken?
TCI does a lot of the fixed curtain arrays. I'm not sure who did this one, to be honest with you. Escapes my mind right now. It wasn't a project I worked on. So this is what happens when a storm hits your station. And one of those curtains starts to come down. I was putting up an 80-meter dipole the other weekend. Actually, we're doing a little bit this weekend. And I got the wire and the rope and stuff wrapped around the trees, and I thought I had a mess. But take a look at this. This is the station we closed in Sri Lanka years ago. Had a pretty massive storm come through, and you know, a lot of the stuff just gave way. You can see all the pieces of the curtain hanging down. You can see that tower's got a bit of a kink to it. Just a absolute mess.
So what caused this?
Just you know, I think it was a pretty heavy storm, and there was just enough components that maybe had worn enough over the years that didn't get maintained, and you know, all it takes is a couple things to snap and land in the wrong place, and it just starts bringing everything else down with it too. So,
and you're feeding power to this thing.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was actually hot at the time or not when it went down, but it would trip the transmitter pretty quick, obviously, right, when it hit a high SWR. But the damage at that station was extensive enough that we wound up closing it. We just, you know, it's too much money to put it all back up. So, okay, that is it. So, I'll give you the screen back.
Yep. And how about some more questions? Put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and Barney will pick them up. We're on here with Ken Claerbout. And Ken, thanks so much for sharing those slides. And, you know, I know you've been all around the world with this stuff. And you also, I just want to talk for a minute while Barney's getting questions together about some of the humanitarian and some of the educational stuff you've done in Ethiopia.
Right.
You want to talk about that?
Sure, absolutely. As I said, there's been a real focus the last 5, 6, 7 years of the FM program in Africa. So it means a lot of travel to Africa. Ethiopian Airlines is got an extensive network throughout Africa, globally, actually, and they're a damn good airline. They've got great service, modern fleet, so on. So they're usually my airline of choice, and they're pretty convenient to fly. So it takes me through Addis Ababa, and sometimes I will spend a weekend there. Maybe I'll go to Africa and I'll go to Congo for the week, and then I'll come back to Addis and spend a weekend, and then go to Burundi or something like that. So there's a ham radio club at the Addis Ababa University, Technical University, that was started by a guy, Sid May. And I got hooked up with him after the first couple of trips. It was an interesting group, but you know, Sid was looking for help. He didn't have a lot of finances to help support the club there, and so I got hooked up with the group. I knew his health wasn't real good, but he passed away a little bit unexpectedly, and it was a shock because he was really like a father figure to a lot of those kids. Now these are kids are just like me. I mean, they're or a lot of us here, they are university students studying electrical engineering, networking. Some of them were civil engineering. But I just thought, boy, this club is probably going to fold because Sid's not there. Well, I got it to Africa enough and to Ethiopia, and I could stop in there enough to work with them. and to kind of keep this thing going. I mean, they didn't need me to tell them what to do or whatever, but it was just, you know, getting them resources if they needed it, just showing up and spending some time with them. Some of them are doing senior projects, and hey, Ken, we can't find these parts. Could you bring them? Absolutely. You know, I'd love to do it. Things like that. The club has really flourished. It's amazing the things they've done over the last years, and you've seen some of it, Tim. And you know, even getting involved in activities up in Europe and that sort of thing. It's amazing what they've done, and a lot of it is, I mean, yeah, I've helped, but a lot of it is their own doing. This last year, of course, the university was pretty much closed down, so they weren't able to bring in new students. That's one of the challenges we have, is the turnover. But they put a posting up on Facebook and said, hey, we're going to open up the club for a show and tell sort of thing. They had a couple hundred responses on Facebook. I don't know if everyone's going to show up, and maybe that's not such a good thing, but that's their doing. And so it's one of the coolest things I've gotten involved in, mentoring them, engineering professionally, but getting involved in the amateur radio aspect of it too. Because I see them, and they're really smart kids, and they've got so much potential, and they just need opportunities. And it's amazing what they can do. So that's really been a cool thing to get involved in. When I jumped in, I didn't really have any thoughts about what I would be doing or where this would go, but boy, has it ever worked out.
It is an incredible story, and we could spend a whole evening talking about that. But how many times have you been there to the university? And I know there's all sorts of security issues there, and all sorts of guards, and I mean, all sorts of.
Yeah. We've been able to work it with the guards. I've got a driver I use now every time. He's got something with a guy. I don't know how he does it. I don't want to know, but he just drives right into that campus and drops me off at the front door, waves at the guards, and you know. I said a couple times, I said, Selman, you need some money? Should we give him some coffee or what? You know, no, don't worry, Ken. So that part of it, yeah. But we've been trying to operate in the evening, some of the lower bands. And the university's locked down at 8 o'clock each night. So in order to stay there overnight, the students have to get permission from the university, from security. And then once we're there, the gates close at 8 o'clock and we're there for the night. So if the bands are no good or something happens, the power goes out, you know, we're stuck there. So that's always been a bit of a challenge, but.
How many times have you been there, Ken?
Gosh, Tim, I don't know, a lot. I mean, I've got passports full of 2-year multiple entry visas to Ethiopia. You know, I've had pages added to my passport. I've had a new one now. A lot. I don't know, but it just, you know, a lot of it is driven by my work travel, just going through there. But it's really almost become a second home for me. I mean, I know a lot of the stuff now and get around in the hotels, and you know, I know the owner of one of the hotels we stay at. It's so it's really kind of become an oasis away from home.
Well, I know you have a weekend and you say, well, is it Ethiopia? Is it Congo? You know, choices.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, because actually it's funny you should mention that, because one time I could have stayed in South Sudan over the weekend, and being a ham radio operator, I got a license I could operate too, but maybe the guy who's stationed I was going to use is out. But, you know, some of these places are a little rough too. And I thought, you know, if I got to spend some weekend somewhere, I'm going to do it in Addis and the Hiltons. I can sit out by the pool and swim, and, you know, to have a pizza and some beer or something like that. And it's a pretty easy choice.
Well, speaking of Sudan, Barney spent some time there. He's ST2LA.
Cool. Okay.
So we got a lot of good connections. Barney, how about some questions?
Okay, one that popped up here, and I suppose the question can be answered both directions, but have you applied any of your broadcast engineering experience in your radio hobby?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I've been building up some of my antennas here the last couple of years, and especially dealing with FM systems, we're always looking at system gains and losses and that sort of thing, transmission line losses. And I've used some of those engineering principles to build up my own ham radio station. And if I could swing the camera on, I won't, but I've got a lot of inch and 5/8 transmission line running at the house and outside. I was able to pick up at a pretty good price. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels between the two. Absolutely.
Barney, another question.
Sort of a two-part question. Does the organization also broadcast any text information through non-RF means? And are there any listeners or any way listeners can provide feedback to the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I do know at one time our business development people were working with some cell providers in Africa. And it's kind of interesting because a lot of these countries you go into, they've got 2, 3, 4 different mobile phone providers. But the business development people were working out some sort of arrangement with these mobile providers to send texts out every hour or something with news headlines, that sort of thing. I don't know whatever came of that, but that was kind of a cool concept. And yeah, there's some of the programming that like VOA does, for example, are call-in shows, so people can call in and actually get on the air and participate in the actual program. I know there's some of the places where we don't have remote monitoring on FM, we'll find out if the station is off the air because listeners will send the DJ something on Facebook and say, hey, we can't hear you. So I'd rather we find out before we get informed that way, but it is another method that works sometimes.
Barney, what else do you have?
A question came up about, is China in particular building comparable broadcast networks around the world?
Yeah, I would have to say yes. They're they're even in the US here. They're all over the shortwave bands. A lot of the places I go for FM placement, you see their transmission equipment there. Just as a whole, China is really everywhere in Africa and involved in a lot of stuff. It's quite something to see. So yeah, yes, they are.
What else do you have, Barney?
There was a question about it. Have you ever had any conspiracy theories with shortwave transmitters causing harm to humans?
Conspiracy theories. Well, I imagine there's plenty floating around there, but we're working on a project in Kuwait now to expand shortwave antennas in the building. And we just actually last Friday had a meeting with our architect engineering firm regarding the placement of the array, the shortwave array, and we're going to have to move it closer to the building. So we do analysis for radiation hazard sort of things, and we do that too with all of our FM programming. So we do take that seriously. But as far as conspiracy theories, I don't know. There's a lot out there I really couldn't address.
What else, Barney?
Will USAGM ever have a program or personality as influential in creating goodwill for the United States as Willis Conover?
I was going to say, I bet you that's the name that gets mentioned. Yeah, he's a legend, no doubt. I don't know. They have it's called Border Crossings now. They have a couple of music programs which do pretty well with the younger people. But nothing, I think, of that stature at this point. So maybe someday.
What else, Barney?
And are low frequency bands used at all, which used to be popular in Europe?
Well, I'm not quite sure what they mean by low frequency. We do some of the shortwave stuff. It really comes down to where we're broadcasting from. This would, for shortwave, a lot of it, this applies to medium wave too, I guess you could say, but depends where we are broadcasting from, to where, time of day, ionospheric conditions factor in for shortwave. So, but yeah, low frequencies, we still use medium wave, which is gives us pretty good coverage at night, especially when you're running 800 kilowatts to a 3-tower array. That helps.
Someone tried to elaborate on that as far as 200 kilohertz signals.
No, nothing that low.
Someone else asked, do you have a schedule of when you might be doing DRM test transmissions that people could attempt to receive?
There's a guy, Kim Elliott, who does some text messaging, some broadcasts. I don't have the information on that. I'm not sure of the DRM schedule, what they're doing right now. If someone wants to contact me, that's fine. I can check into that. I don't off the top of my head know what they're doing for as far as schedules for DRM broadcasting. But
So what's a good email for you, Ken?
Ken K4ZW at gmail.com. KEN K4ZW at gmail.com.
Thanks. Barney, other questions?
Yeah, sort of reverse of the other question before. Has your ham radio experience helped you in your professional work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be doing this today if I wasn't a ham. I think a lot of us that have gotten involved to the degree we have in ham radio often wonder what we would be doing if we hadn't gotten involved in ham radio. My parents owned a furniture and flooring store. I might have taken that over, which would have been fine. I mean, it was a great business too, but because of my ham radio activities, I've gotten into this job. I've gotten to see the world, so it's huge.
Other questions, Barney?
What is your take on misinformation broadcasting?
Well, I don't like fake news. I mean, I like I said, I'm in engineering. I don't dabble much in the content. I mean, I can listen to content from our agency or other broadcasters, and sometimes, yeah, that's pretty good reporting, or other times, that's kind of shoddy work. But that's why I said I'm glad in engineering. We don't deal with that too much.
Barney, anything else?
I'm sort of, well, here's another one. I was thinking I was running out of comments, but they keep popping up. What sort of pattern does a 3-tower 900 kilowatt station have? And what sort of coverage do you get with that much power?
As far as the beam width of the pattern, so that's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of it depends on the phasing that's set up with it. And I mean, it's all designed for a specific coverage area. We know the frequency, we know the area we want to cover. So, the height of the towers, the phasing network all plays into it. The one I showed, I haven't worked with medium wave enough to know for sure, be quite honest with you.
Then a question pop up. Is there any cooperation with AFRTS or its successor?
No. The only thing I can think of is we had a new guy come on board yesterday who has done some work with them in the past, but no, none that I'm aware of.
Anything else, Barney?
I think I'm running out of questions.
Okay. Well, Ken, this has been a fascinating time with you here this evening. And I know I've learned a lot, and I want to thank you so much for coming on. Also want to thank Barney for his work on the questions. And I hope all of our viewers and participants have had fun too. And Ken, I can't thank you for all the things you do, not only for your employer, but those weekends and your spare time that you spread around the world. It's not only Ethiopia, it's Mongolia, it's all kinds of places that you show up and give of your time and your efforts to make the world a better place and to make wireless the magic. I can't imagine how these university students feel when you show up. You're like, Santa Claus.
Yeah.
and not only from the standpoint of what you're bringing tangibly, but also what you're teaching. And you're changing the face around the world of things that are going on. So I want to thank you for all of that, and we wish you continued success. And thanks so much for being a part of the Radio Club of America.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. I really appreciate that. And, you do an awful lot too. So that's pretty high praise coming from someone like yourself. And, it's interesting because in talking to those students, they say, I'd like to have a job like yours. Well, that was me when I was their age, thinking, hey, that's what I want to do. And the ad popped up in QST and away we went. So, I'm hoping they get the opportunities as well. But it's really a labor of love. I mean, it's a blast. I've gotten to see so many things, meet so many different people, do a lot of cool things. I mean, I really feel blessed, quite honestly, and it's nothing. I mean, if I had to do it over, that's exactly how I would do it. I've been very fortunate, and you know, people ask me, when are you going to retire? I mean, I'm only 59 yet, but I'm not ready. I'm having too much fun. I'm, you know, making pretty good money and everything. I'm having a blast, so I'm not ready to pull the plug yet.
All right, and getting great responses here, also from guys like Dr. Ted Rappaport, one of our RCA achievers, big time. Barney, any final comments before we let Ken go here? He's got to
There are
get
a
up.
few more questions, but if we want to keep going, I'll throw a few out. But
Yeah, throw a few out.
Can you tell us what kind of annual budget your agency has?
The agency as a whole, it just bounces around a little bit. I want to say 650 million, something like that. I don't know. I mean, you know, when I break it down to our FM network, I think I've got a budget of the FM stuff of around 15, 16 million. You know, some of the other stuff we're doing is probably around 5, 10 million. You know, some of these high powered stations cost quite a bit. Matter of fact, we're having to buy a bunch of spare parts and do some generator maintenance in Tajikistan, and some of that stuff doesn't come cheap. So, but I have to say, I mean, I feel like we've, for the most part, got the budget we need to do most of the work. It's not always easy, but.
Barney, any last?
Well, there was one about remote receivers. I know you talked a little bit about
Sure,
that.
I saw
do you
that,
use
yeah.
web, like a web SDR for that purpose?
Absolutely. We do. We have a fairly robust, as I mentioned, global monitoring. We have 4, we call them TMOs, technical monitors. One's in Helsinki, Finland. He may even be on here tonight. Hi, Timo, if you're there. One in New Delhi, one in Hong Kong, and Vienna, Austria was the other one. And then under them are other monitors around the globe, and we do that, web-based SDRs. So our broadcast schedule is programmed in these systems, so we get recordings. We can listen to everything. We just had a schedule change here at the end of March, I guess it was. So these guys will go and check to make sure all the right programming is going out, content, frequency, is it clear? You know, if we've got interference, maybe we need to adjust frequencies, that sort of thing. So yeah, we do have a pretty extensive global monitoring network as well. It's amazing some of the stuff that goes on. Some of this I haven't been involved in before, but now in my new role, I'm learning about it. And, I become even more appreciative of the work these people are doing.
Barney, anything further?
No, a number of compliments up there, Ken, and I know I enjoyed this. It was, as Tim, I learned some things, quite a few things tonight.
Well, thanks again for having me, guys. This was great. The time really flew by. So I'm thankful for the opportunity, and wish you all the best.
Okay, so everyone who is watching tonight, I hope you had a great time, and we'll be back next month with our networking series. That's a members only, and please go to the radioclubofamerica.org. If you're not a member, please consider signing up, and we'll look for you next time. So all the best from the Radio Club of America, and we'll see you next time.